Folks, I don't care what kind of a day you're having. When you hear that tune, it's time to start smiling because it's time for another episode of the Rec Poker Podcast. I just love seeing all these folks in the Zoom chat grooving and bouncing along to that intro music from Peter Trulin. So thanks again, Peter Trulin. And if you're not Peter Trulin, then let me tell you, this is the Rec Poker Podcast, the Forums edition, where we're going to talk a little strategy like we do each and every week. Thanks for joining us. I have to thank our sponsors, the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, because without their support, we probably wouldn't be here. Most of what we do here at Rec Poker is free. We're a largely volunteer-based organization. My name's Jim Reed. I go by Bluffsterini in the home games and at Rec Poker Jim on Twitter. And I'm one of the people that works along to make the magic happen here at Rec Poker. But I'm just one of a village, one of a group, one of the gang, one of the crew. We call our leadership group here the Wrecking Crew. And if you want to find out more about me and other members of the Wrecking Crew, you can go to rec.poker/crew. But you can also just listen up because you're going to meet a few of them right here tonight on the air.
I'm Chris Jones. You can find me 5B5 on Threads or 5x5 in the Poker Stars home game.
And I'm Rob Washam, and you can find me as Rabman50 just about everywhere.
I'm Taylor Moss. I'm Taylor_Moss on X or Twitter, whatever it is these days, and Gopher Boy TJM in the Rec Poker home game.
Yeah, while we still have it, let's enjoy it. And one of the perks of being a premium member here at Rec Poker is that you get to join the forums edition of the podcast and share your hands and your experiences and your thoughts and insights here on the air. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce a premium member that some of our regular listeners might be familiar with, the one and only Philip Razor, who goes by That Jerk Phil in the YouTube chat. Phil, thank you for joining us on the show.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So Phil, you are a hilarious follow on Twitter at PSR1973. If you're playing in the Rec Poker home games, where should people look to get their easy chips?
I don't remember my name on there. It's been a while since I played.
Okay, yeah. It probably has the word Phil in there somewhere. Or
I'm sure it does. Yeah. If you see someone named Phil, it's probably me.
Yeah.
I thought the easy chips were Bluffsterini, though, right?
Yeah. The easy chips are Bluffsterini. That's true. And yeah, I can make a little fun of Phil tonight because we're going to be talking about a tournament he played recently, which, Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, this was your biggest live score ever that happened just recently.
By
right?
about 3 times.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So
and it was this past weekend in Dayton, Ohio. Oh mio, oh myo, Dayton, Ohio.
So first of all, just congratulations. I mean, when you break your own personal record for cash, that's a special monumental achievement. You did it in, well, here, don't let me put words in your mouth. Tell us a little bit about the tournament, and we're going to talk about a couple strategic elements that came up throughout it. But first, just kind of set the stage. Where was it? What was the buy-in, and what possessed you to play it?
So it's at a card room in Dayton called the Mad River Poker Club in Dayton, and I think they've been open for a couple years. I have been just a couple times over there, and they had a one-night $100,000 guarantee for the owner's birthday party.
Oh.
They had cake, they had catered food, they had all sorts of stuff. It was pretty wild. They had I think around 330 entries. It's a $450 buy-in, $100,000 guarantee, and they crushed it. They had $135,000 in the prize pool, I think, at the end of the day. 30-minute levels, and they start off super big stack. I mean, it's 60,000 starting out, and 100, 200 blinds. They also do different ante than just about everywhere else I've played. They still do a big blind ante, and this is on all their tournaments. They do a big blind ante. The big blind pays the ante, but it's the size of the small blind instead of the big blind.
Interesting.
And it changes it just a little bit because it's a little bit less money in the pot to begin with. So it's just something you got to remember. And I decided, because it was so deep and I didn't want to play and basically I decided to go last minute. In the morning, my wife and my mom and I went to a Swiss festival up in Bern, Indiana, while the tournament has already started. And I was looking at it on Poker Atlas and saw that maybe they weren't going to make the guarantee, and
Mm.
so I figured I'd go in and go late reg in it.
This
And
classic
they,
poker player, the overlay alarm goes off in our minds, and we're like, "Oh, I got to go get a piece of that overlay."
it's about an hour away from here anyway. So I checked at a couple stoplights, and way before I even got there, it already had passed the. So I got in level, I want to say level 9, and I had 37 big blinds starting out. So it was still a decent stack. And I got to miss 4.5 hours
Right.
of the action.
Yeah.
And it's been years and years since I've late regged. I never buy in late. And listening to the podcast, what, a week or two ago, you guys were talking about, hey, go try late regging. So hey, here we go.
There you
And
go.
I started building a stack kind of right away. But then got knocked down.
Sure.
And then just started doubling up and doubling up. And got a stack going. I pretty much, with the way the levels were going, I pretty much stayed around the 30 to 40 big blind level for basically the rest of the night. And would get knocked down a little bit, but I was getting just hit in face with the deck all evening.
That helps. That helps.
I had aces probably, I want to say 4 times. I had kings a couple times. But yeah, I did not get ace king a single time. So there's the only one I didn't get.
So let's talk about stack sizes a little bit here with the panel, because this is an interesting subject to me, especially when it comes to late registration. So I kind of feel like that range of 30 to 35 big blinds is a really hard stack size to play. You can't 3-bet sort of as freely as you can when you're deeper. You can't just shove as easily as you can when you're tighter. I'm going to open this up to Chris, Taylor, and Rob. Do you guys have, when you're thinking about late registering, do you have a target in mind for, like, if the starting stack is going to be X number of big blinds, I'll do it, but if it's going to be too small, I won't? Whoever unmutes first, feel free to jump in there. For me, I'm always kind of curious about, like, where is that threshold? Yeah, Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, I play a decent amount online, and online I don't care too much. Like I know a lot of people will be like, I'm not going in less than 20. Like that really doesn't deter me all that much. Honestly, like I'd have to get like in like the 10 big blind range for me to like really start feeling hesitant about it. The thing that I think is definitely interesting about this is like the live dynamic of this. Like the reason I say this with like online is like, I can play multiple tournaments at the same time. I can register really easily, but with live, like you have to drive there, you're playing one tournament, and like then it's like, well, what's my worth? And that's how I think about that spot. It's almost not just the pure like poker dynamic of it, but also just like the life dynamic of it. Like how far did I have to drive to get there? If I register with 15 big blinds, how much play am I actually expecting to have in this situation? And it's almost like this like life equation that I'm trying to go through to like think about like what is my life EV in this spot, not just necessarily like the dollar EV of the tournament or anything like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because and I think it matters a lot, the difference between live and online, for precisely that reason. Rob?
I agree 100% with Taylor. I think if I was going to drive an hour, I'd want, 35 or 40 big blinds minimum if I'm going to late register. If it's 20, I'm that's just, you're right in that fold mode almost at 20, right? You're really, somebody raises in front of you, what are you going to do? You're going to do a rejam, usually at that stack depth if you want to play. So I think, 35 or 40 is probably worthwhile because you still have a little room to maneuver, make some plays, maybe slowly build your chip stack without having to put it all at risk.
Mhm. So, yeah, Chris.
Mine's a little lower than that, but I agree. There's a big difference between live and online. Online, I'm regularly now trying to late register online tournaments, and do it in the 10 to 15 big blind range because I just and some of them end within one hand,
Sure.
and that's fine, right? That's fine. Like I came there, I put in my kings, and they lost, and now I'm done. But like that is not a very good experience for driving to somewhere that's like 45 minutes away and whatever. So I would never, I don't think I'd ever late register a live tournament without 30. That would be if I didn't have 30 big blinds, I wouldn't do it.
And it does feel like those blinds go up faster live. Like even though they actually go up more slowly, the hands are also being played more slowly, and you get fewer hands per level.
Yeah, for sure.
It feels like that live. Chris and Taylor specifically, does that apply across your entire buy-in range? Like, would you be just as happy to sit in a late register for a short stack in one of the tournaments that are sort of higher in your buy-in range, or is it something that you're really comfortable doing for the low and the middle end of your buy-in range, but you might do it less for the top?
I like there really shouldn't be a difference
I
in
know.
that. And like I definitely treat it, or like I treat it the same way, but it doesn't feel the same way, if that makes sense. Like I will still late register, the higher buy-ins of my range that I play in, but for some reason it just feels like more painful or more concerning or more uneasy. But I don't know why that is.
I kind of feel almost the opposite. Like the highest buy-ins that I'll play in, I don't necessarily think I have a skill edge. And so I hope I do, and in some spots I do, but I definitely feel I have more of a skill edge in the lower to, and so those ones I actually want a little bit more playability. And I don't mind going in and just kind of trying to run up a stack and lowering my variant, like it increases my variance, but it levels the playing field against maybe highly skilled opponents. And so I don't mind taking that approach with some of those, as long as you have to balance it out so you're not just going broke bankroll wise. And if you want to be playing for a while, you've got to like be able to stretch that out a bit. So
that's a good point. So Phil, you play live a lot. You're in a good part of the country for poker. It feels like you can travel to poker rooms pretty easily. Where's this in your buy-in? I think you said this one was 450. That feels like for a lot of our listeners, that might be a little high for sort of their typical comfortable buy-in rate.
Yeah, it's high for me too. I don't do that a lot, but this one I just felt like it basically.
Yeah. Nice.
And
nice. One of the perks of being a recreational player like us, right? It's like, let's go have some fun, baby.
Exactly. And also I knew it'd be a soft field. And that's another reason why I went, and I was right. And it's not saying anything about me, because I'm pretty soft too, but it was just, it's a lot of lumpers. I mean, every hand, everyone is lumping around, and you put a little pressure on and you get heads up, and it's just dead money all over the place. So yeah, so it I knew it was going to be soft, and so, and I've been playing well too recently. So it felt like I hate, and I've said it before, and I always feel stupid saying it, but I can tell when I'm going to play good. I wake up in the morning and I know it's going to, and I'm generally right. And I generally cash when I feel it in the morning. So I just need to remember not to go when I don't feel it. And
That's
it would be much better.
Well, I don't think it's crazy. Like we can't tell when flips are going to go our way, but we can tell when we're well rested, when we're in a good psyche, when we're able to make.
And I wasn't well rested at all.
Okay, well,
I'd been up at 5 in the morning this time, and I knew it was if I was going to make a run, it was going to be late, and it was. I was up 24 hours
Wow.
doing it, and by the end, I drank an entire case of Mountain Dew while I was there, basically to keep going. And that's actually another reason why I chopped, because I wasn't anywhere near my best at the end.
Mm.
But yeah, but getting there was awfully fun.
Yeah.
I won almost every flip. I also won when there was absolutely no reason I should have won, like three. I was dominated 3 hands in a row and won each one of them.
You
And
have been
all
listening to the
ends.
podcast. Those are important
Yeah.
flips to win.
Yeah, and it wasn't, and I didn't even have to wait. They were all on the flop too. Especially the one actually leading to the final table. There was I want to say there was 11 left. So yeah, it was the last two tables. And the guy to my right, we got it in. He had aces and I had tens, and I just said 10's gonna hit. And boom, on the flop, a 10 hit. And it did knock him out, but it crippled him and he got knocked out the next hand. But it was like that all night long. I had jacks do the same thing, jacks versus queens. It was stupid. I was way too lucky. I played good too, don't get me wrong, but I was really lucky. There's a lot of
Hey.
lucky hands.
Listen, I don't know anyone that gets to the final table of an MTT without playing well and getting lucky. It definitely takes both. Rob?
Yeah, my question for Phil was going to be, how many times did you get lucky?
Yeah.
Because I don't know that anyone has ever won a tournament without getting lucky.
Yeah, you have.
It
At
was
least
probably once
once.
an hour. I'm gonna guess it was like once an hour.
Yeah.
The levels were 30 minutes, so every other level I was getting some kind of luck out. But I generally bluff a little bit too much. I kept that down this time. I bluffed. I had two major bluffs. One didn't work out, and one did. And both. So I mean, that's pretty good. 50-50 on bluffs isn't bad.
Yeah, I think that puts
Um,
you in plus EV territory.
and the one that I didn't do, I should never played anyway. It was I was playing 6-9 offsuit just for the meme, and
Just because it's
just
just nice.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah. And I just kind of got
Nice.
trapped and I couldn't get out of it. And I go, well, screw it. I'll just go with it. And dude had flopped he had flopped a full house on it and just let me go all the way through it. And I'm going, okay, well, what are you gonna do?
So that one was not nice, as it turned out. You thought
Yeah,
it was
no,
going to
that
be
wasn't
nice.
nice, but it was
was
fine. I lost half my stack on that, but I still had a huge. At that point, I had when I did that, I had 80 big blinds, I think, and it knocked me down to
Wow.
40, and I was fine. I built it back up. Just
Yeah.
actually, literally the next hand, I got it all back. So it was fine. But
Well,
yeah, no, it was a blast. So
the trip to the final table is not a smooth ascent of small pots chipping up, right? I mean, if you look at the graphs, look at the graphs of players getting to the final table. It's huge swings and winning big pots and losing big pots, and being on the right side of it matters a lot in these MTTs. So that brings us to the point that I thought was really interesting. So we talked about like the virtues of late registering. We've talked about that on the show a bit recently. There's a lot of people have sort of come around to that idea of being a more profitable play, even if you don't get to play as much poker, which is what we all enjoy so much. But then you got to the final table, so you're 10-handed. You're in this official final table rule. It's a pretty big tournament, and the subject of chopping comes up. And I know you've talked in the past about not liking to chop, but this is a lot of money here. I guess
yeah,
let's talk about this. Talk about that a little bit. Like, how did it get brought up, and what were the chip stacks at that time? Was it roughly equivalent, or what was it like? What was the Somsky
so
ratio
yeah,
of the final table?
so like 9 of us had anywhere. I think the chip leader had a big stack. I mean, he came in. He was the chip leader. The rest of us had anywhere from, a couple people were pretty short stacked. I mean, like maybe 10 big blinds. I think the average was around 20 at that point, maybe less. Maybe it might have been 15. So it was just going to be a shove fest from there on out, and it was 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And the tournament started at noon. Most of the other people there had been there the entire day. And the money, I do not like the chop, but with life-changing money, and this isn't exactly life-changing money, but it's a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
And I mean, Jonathan Little, that's kind of where I got that, was Jonathan Little and all his stuff says, don't chop unless it's life-changing money. Because at the very least, you get the experience of playing, smaller and smaller, and you can get, most people don't play a lot of heads up, for example.
Right.
And you need that experience for when you're going to do it. And so I try to do that. In smaller tournaments, I don't chop, period. But this one, I didn't bring it up. And at first I said no. There was like 3 of us who said no at first. Because they wanted to do an even chop, and the chip leader wasn't having that at all. And
Makes sense.
he shouldn't have.
Right.
And I suggested an IM chop, and unfortunately, nobody else really knew what that was. And
which is a good sign.
Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly. And then one of the other players came up with the idea of the chip leader taking 3rd place money, and the rest of us basically getting, I can't remember if it was 4th or 5th, is the way it turned out. And that seemed to be okay with everybody, especially, and I was fine with it because A, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And B, I was just tired. I was exhausted. I was not going to play well on the final table if it came to it. I was already like the last couple levels before that, I was making mistakes all over the place, and I knew myself, I wasn't going to be able to. And I had an average stack, but I had a pretty good idea I was going to be one of the first ones out if we played. And I mean, the 9th place, I can't remember what 10th place paid, but I ended up making, I think, $7,000 more than 9th place would have made. So I think 9th was about $2,000, and I ended up with 10. Or we all did 9,500, and the chip leader got, I think, actually he got 10%. So of the thing, so it was like he got 13,500 or something like that.
Right.
With it being $135,000 in the prize pool. So
it
worked out great.
Mean, that does seem like a pretty appealing chop. So I just want to, I'll open this up to the panel here. So 10-handed, you've got a couple players that are pretty short, a lot of other players that are sort of in that like 10 to 15, maybe up to 20 bigs, and then really just that one player that sort of had a commanding chip lead at that point. Chris, Taylor, Rob, is there like a red flag? Is there a chop that someone should be saying no to there? Taylor, you unmuted. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that like to reinforce the no chop, never taking a chop type of thing. But like, I mean, it is what it is. You're dividing up the prize pool in a way that you think is fair. Like it is what it is. So like, I'm never going to knock someone for it. However, if I went in there and no one knew what an ICM chop was at a final table, I might be a little bit more tempted to not want to chop if they're unaware.
Yeah, and I really was.
ICMs.
I really wanted to play, but I knew it wasn't going to be to my benefit if I did. So
yeah. No, I mean, you lay out all the things that like you're thinking about the right stuff. Like how much energy do you have? How how are you feeling like in that moment? That type of stuff. Like if that's not the case, then like don't do it. And then like the other thing that I think is like really important here is like how often have you played at live final tables? How comfortable are you in those types of situations? And then on the side of like, okay, this is a higher buy-in for you. You're playing for a lot more money than you have previously. Like I haven't played many live final tables personally where like first place is more than like $5,000, and you're talking about like way above that. So like that stuff like all of a sudden like really shakes up things. So like, you know, finding the like, hey, I'm fine with this dollar amount and getting out, like to me it is what it is. But hey, you're also missing out on that opportunity of playing at that live final table and getting that experience. And, you know, do you have an edge against someone? So like it can go both ways, but like for anyone to knock those types of situations, it's just like, okay, how often are you in those spots?
And I
Yeah, Rob?
think the thing that you want to not do is take a chop just because you want to keep everybody else happy. You know,
Mm.
keep up with your
Mhm.
peers. You know, you don't want anybody to look at you and say, "Look at that asshole. He won't chop." You know, that's not a good reason. I like what Phil said about, you know, it's going to be a shove fest. It's going to be whoever gets lucky, because the chip stacks are, you know, if you're sitting at 15 big blinds, you don't have a lot of play. And now you're relying on catching cards to ladder up and get deeper into the tournament. So in those types of circumstances, and especially at 3 o'clock in the morning, when you've been playing all night long, it gets to be where you don't have the energy anymore. That's a very good reason to chop. Definitely a good reason to chop. Because like he said, he went from, you know, he could easily have gone out 10th, 9th, 8th, 7th, but he got 5th place money. So he was able, you know, who knows if he could survive that long. And especially again, if it's just a shove fest, it's just not that much fun.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, I mean the thing that kind of piqued my interest the most is when you talked about it being 3 a.m, you were tired, you're already making mistakes, you're realizing that you're not playing that game that you came there thinking in the morning, like I'm going to play my best. And that is the number one argument I'd have for why I'd want to make a deal in a chop, because yeah, I love when I if it would take you probably until, if it's already 3 a.m, there's 10 players at a final table to get 5th place money. It's going to be 4:35 in the morning before that even happens, probably, unless people are really on ICM aware and they're just like, just all the chips go in the middle and we start busting people right and left, which might happen based on what our impression is of these folks. I am surprised the chip leader didn't. If I was this dominant chip leader and I'm seeing all these shorties and all this shove fest stuff below me, and you didn't say exactly, but if I've got 60, 70, 80 big blinds in this exact scenario.
It wasn't like that. He had probably maybe 40 bigs at most, so maybe double average.
Okay, then I'm probably more willing to probably make a deal. If I get above 50 or something, I'd be like, get back to me when you come up with a better deal, because I'm not doing this. But otherwise, I think it sounds great, and you had all the right reasons to do it, I think.
And it did take a little bit of conversation with them, and I stayed out of that. The other guys were making a little bit more sense than I was at that point. So, but he was an older guy. He was probably, I want to say 70, 75.
So he's not that old.
And but I mean, if I'm 50 and I was that tired, I'm thinking he was probably pretty tired too. Yeah. And there were some younger guys there who but they were the first to suggest it. So it took some conversation. I think we talked about 10 minutes. But getting 10 people to agree to a chop in 10 minutes, that's actually pretty quick. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think the younger guys probably want to start partying because they won some money.
Yeah, probably. But it's Dayton.
Yeah. Well, I really like this idea of that Chris brought up, which is, you know, it's going to take a while to get to that 5th place money. The fact that you were all able to lock that up, like that the chip leader was able, like the fact that no one got first or second place money is the reason that the chop worked out, because there was enough to spread around to make it worth it for everybody else. Because I do think that's something where even if you're one of those middle stacks, you're not guaranteed to make the middle of the money. You're not, it could just easily be you going out in 7th or 8th, and then you'd be kicking yourself for not taking it. I guess the other thing is, was there any sense of like, while the conversation was going on, was there any sense of like, well, why don't we just wait for a couple of people to bust and then chop? Did that, because I've heard that too.
Yeah, no, I thought it. I didn't bring it up. I was waiting for someone else to say. Nobody said it. So I don't know if anyone else was thinking it or not. I did think about it, but even the short guys weren't that much shorter. I mean, they were short, but we were all short. So I just personally, I didn't bring it up because I didn't want to be that guy who got knocked out in 10. And I was thinking ICM throughout, and actually more than I normally do, because around the money bubble, I had a nice stack, and I was able to bully a little bit on the money bubble, but I just it was a pretty see, I can't talk. It was a pretty quick bubble too. It was I think we went in the hand to hand, with they paid 45, I think, and or 43, and they went in hand to hand at I think at 45, and they did I think it was 6 hands and we were in the money. So but and then I was watching for all the ladders, and and was playing well around the ladders and making good choices, but it was just, the later it got, the more mistakes I was making. So it was time. So yeah.
The waiting for people to bust out and then like re-engaging chop discussions is always kind of like a weird one, because you can't like verbally like say I want to see like 2 more people bust out, and then I'll like start talking chop, because then all of a sudden everyone like tightens up, and maybe that's the thing that you want to do, but like you can keep that in the back of your head, but you don't really like vocalize those types of things. But like honestly, that's how I view those situations. Like if I am considering a chop, like I'm not like really entertaining it right away. I want to see how people are starting to play, and then also like knowing back in my mind, like I'll probably engage this conversation with 7 left, with 6 left, or however I'm like thinking about it in that type of spot. But it can be detrimental too, where all of a sudden you lose half your stack, and then you're like, oh yeah, guys, a chop. What do you think about then?
Who said chop?
You do lose some leverage in that spot. So like understanding when to like turn the switch on or off, whether you're like talking about chops, can be a tough or weird one too.
I do have a story about that. It was years ago, in Cincinnati, and we were down. It was pretty late. It was a small tournament. It wasn't like this. It was probably the $150 or $100 buy-in, and we got down to, I think it was 8 or 9, and this one guy who'd been a dick the entire evening started berating everybody about how we needed to chop because he had places to go and do all this stuff. And so I absolutely refused. There was no way I was going to let this guy do this. And immediately he gets knocked out. And while he's still standing there, I said, okay, I'm ready to chop now. Just because he was such a dick. So in front of him, and man, you could see.
Why am I not surprised?
Coming out of his
I was gonna say,
yeah.
Classic Phil, really, right?
And we did end up chopping right then. But it was, just don't be a dick. If you're gonna
just don't be a dick.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I am here, but just for fun. I'm not one at the poker table. I barely talk at all at the table. I got my earphones in. I don't want to hear people bickering back and forth. And that's why I mean, people complain about people wearing headphones. I do it because I don't want to hear other people berating other people, or more specifically berating me about my play.
Only if they've seen you play, to be fair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so just don't be a dick and it'll all work out.
You'd be surprised how often "don't be a dick" is good advice, particularly at the poker table. Like, with Steve and I, when we would go down to Vegas for the series, we'd have all these stories about people like showing us their hands because we were nice, or like Steve busted this woman from a tournament and she bought him a massage afterwards because he had been like a nice, fun person at the table. You get folds, you get kind of soft played a bit from time to time. Just be a nice person, for God's sake. Like, not only are you enriching your internal soul, but you actually get all these perks, real life perks at the table.
I actually did show somebody my hand because he made the most amazing laydown I've ever seen in a tournament like this. Which, I mean, isn't saying much. I haven't been in a lot of tournaments like this, but he folded the second nut flush to me on I
Wow.
had jammed the river. I had the nuts, and he tanked for maybe 5 minutes, and then folded and showed the second nuts, and so I showed him that I had it. And he goes, "Oh, thanks. If you hadn't done that, I'd been hilding for the next 2 hours." I said, "Well, then I probably shouldn't have showed you, but I mean, if he hadn't showed, I wouldn't have showed, but he did, so I
Right.
figured it was be all right." And yeah, just I won't do that all the time, but not this specific case. It was such a good laydown that I had to reward the guys. So
Nice. Nice.
yeah.
Well, the last thing I wanted to talk about was chop negotiation. So, Rob, you've talked about this before, and I think that based on the conversation here, I think we're kind of all on the same page. When the subject of a chop comes up, everyone has to agree. So there's a deal making that goes on, which means that there's a negotiation, which means that certain people have leverage. And when Taylor was talking about how he likes to sort of think about a chop a couple positions early and see how people adjust their play, it really matters to me in my own thought process of who wants the chop, who's willing to give up more than they should to get it. And I'm cutthroat. Listen, I'm a cutthroat player at the table. When I value bet and when I bluff, I'm picking my sizes to maximize my edge and to get the most chips that I can. And it's no different when negotiating a chop. Like, you're competing with these other players, and you don't want to be a dick, obviously, because we're all here to have fun and enjoy the game together. But if someone's going to overpay or like take less than they should or less than they deserve just to get a chop, I think you're kind of doing yourself a disservice not to extract as much value as you can, just like you would be leaving chips on the table if you made a quarter pot bet when you could get called by a half pot bet. So I always for me, the chop is really about the negotiation of it and really just trying to make as much money as you can at that point that like we're not playing any more poker. It's just how much are you going to walk home with. And so I think because you can just say no, you can just say no. But this sounds like it was a really good chop for everybody. The only person that it feels like might have needed some cajoling would be the chip leader. And it sounds like they didn't have such a commanding lead that it was all sewn up for them anyway. It feels like a pretty good one. Rob, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking that everybody has leverage in a chop situation. Does anybody, even the short stack, can say no?
Right.
Because if he's a short stack, he doesn't have, if you're going to do an ICM chop, he's going to make a little bit more money than minimum, right?
Yes.
But not that much more. And if it's a smaller tournament and the money's not that big a deal, he has a chance to ladder up by not taking the chop. So if you're taking an ICM chop, it depends on what how many chips everybody has. So if there's a big disparity between first and last, well, then maybe that last place person is not going to get that much more money in an ICM chop. So why bother doing it? Let's play some more. Maybe I can get lucky. Maybe I get aces and double up and all of a sudden move up and ladder up 2 or 3 spots. So everybody has leverage in a chop negotiation. It doesn't matter how many chips you have.
And it just goes to show why the Somsky ratio is such an important measure in the world of poker. So I know everyone already knows the Somsky ratio. You can't play poker seriously these days without knowing all about the Somsky ratio. But just in case, it describes the ratio, the difference in chips between the short stack and the big stack at the final table. And the smaller the Somsky ratio, the more, everyone should feel pretty good about chopping, because you're really, it could be anyone's game. But if you get a big Somsky ratio and there's some winners, there's some haves and some have-nots, then the chop's going to be a little less even and sort of fluid and comfortable for everybody, because there's going to be winners and losers a little more often. But this is a really interesting subject. So thanks for coming on the show and talking about it, Phil. Is there anything else that we should talk about here in this moment? I think we kind of hit the virtues of late registering, talked about stack sizes a bit, and sort of the mechanics and the incentives involved with chopping. And all right, well then, thank you to Phil Razor for coming on and for your premium membership. We appreciate your support, sir. And to Chris Jones and Taylor Moss and Rob Washam, and of course the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack and Casino. Thanks for tuning in, listeners. We have such a good time doing this show for you every week, and we'll see you again soon. Good night, everybody.